So, Richard, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Matthew from Heart Emotion, all the way in South Africa, and you're in the UK. It's so good to have you here. How are things with you?
Yeah, really good. Thank you, Matthew. It's nice to talk to you today. Yeah, surviving. It's raining, but I made my way into the workshop early this morning and found the lads. I haven't been in for a few days. I was away working last week, so they were all sitting in the kitchen drinking tea, which I did for a while before thinking, chaps,
It's
should we get
time.
on? Yeah, work must happen. But I'm
That's
good.
awesome. No, that's awesome. So, South Africa's got a huge love for classic cars, and I'm sure everywhere around the world. But I know that you've got a special, sort of similar South African car called Oliver, and I know that
Yes.
that is a very important car. So,
Yeah.
how important is that car for you? Because I know you just did a restoration, and I'm sure you're not going to let that car go anytime soon.
No, no, no. That car's a keeper. It'll stay with me. I keep toying with the idea of putting him into another type of work. I don't know, maybe preparing him for rally or some sort of classic racing. But every time I voice that idea, people go berserk at me. I feel like it's almost a public monument. I don't really own that car. I just am the custodian of it. I daren't do anything to it. But
Hmm.
I am pleased. You're right when you talk about South Africa and classic cars. We've long been aware of that. I mean, there's a big tie. We've been coming to South Africa for
Yeah.
decades. It is very much a second home. So I'm so pleased that this show is being seen there because it is. I feel like that's actually me.
Yeah.
It's a real bit of me
Mm.
because I mean the story of how the workshop came about is very honest and real. And that my grandfather was a coach builder. That's what he did. So he built cars. He did wood, metal
Yeah.
frame over it, metal body over it. And the guys, Anthony and Neil, the father and son team, who are the sort of heart of this show, they've been working on my cars for years. So when I'd be away with the Grand Tour or Top Gear filming, they'd be back home in their workshop, at their little workshop just down the road,
Yeah.
working on my E-Type, Bentley, XK, all sorts of cars. And when I wasn't working, I used to go and see them on a Friday. We had fish and chip Friday. So I'd pick up the fish and chips, peculiarly British lunch, I know, wrapped in
Yes.
paper and everything. Have you never had them?
I'm not so much, but I'm told about the British fish and chips as a
Oh
thing.
man, you're
But
great. It's the best. So it's just wrapped up in paper.
yeah.
So I'd arrive on a Friday lunchtime with their fish and chips, and we'd sit in their little workshop looking at my car and whatever they were working on and chat.
Yeah.
But one week I went in, and Neil, the father, was looking a bit sad, and he said, "Well, I'm losing the workshop. They're wanting to develop it."
Mm.
He wasn't in a position to start again, so
Yeah.
they would have ended up probably just breaking up that business and having to work for other people or something. And
Yeah.
I said, "Well, it's terrible. I need you to do my cars." But
Yeah.
I'm not Jay Leno. I can't afford to employ you just to work for me. And also, I
Yeah.
wouldn't do it even if I could,
Yeah.
because there's not a lot of dignity in them for them. Just working for some bloke off the telly who 1 year
No,
says,
exactly.
"Oh, I don't want to restore any cars." I wouldn't want to do it.
Mm.
So I said, "Look, I'll fund us into a new business
Mm.
and help find the work. And let's, hopefully you'll get time to work on my cars as well as
Mm.
customer cars." And then after that, we set off on that path. And then I thought, wait a minute, this might make a nice TV show.
Mm.
And I own a production company, so I thought, well,
Nice.
let's see if we can sell it as a TV show, and we did. Um, but that means it leads with the workshop. The workshop is a real endeavor. It is a real
Yeah.
business. It's their living. Neil's brother Andrew has joined now. It's their living. So I have to make it work. If it runs out of money at the end of the month, I have to put the money in
Yeah.
because otherwise they can't live.
Yeah.
So it's quite a burden, but it's been immense fun. And it is a real honest
Mm.
venture.
It's nice. It's been really cool to see that sort of organic nature because, we always see a lot of personalities and entities get involved, but they're always been like, eagle-eyed over it and not as
Yeah.
intertwined into it. So I love the fact that it was something that was close to you. They restored your E-Type. They did a fantastic job with that and you wanted to get involved. So I think the next thing I'd want to ask for you is now that you're involved directly with them, coming from your side of traveling, getting in a plane, going and doing fantastic spinny bouts, the
Yeah.
occasional crash.
The
What's it
odd one.
what's it been like now for you getting involved into the business side of things and sort of managing that as opposed to just rocking up on set, cameras, everybody does their thing for you, but now you're hands on. Has that been a big change to the 9 to 5?
You're very perceptive because yes, that's the big change. Yeah, absolutely. Ordinarily, yeah, I've been to South Africa a million times, but somebody tells me when to be at Heathrow. I get on a nice aeroplane in the posh seats. I always turn left, and then have a lovely flight, and then I get to South Africa and I go
Yeah.
where it's been arranged to do. Whereas now I'm in a different world, and I would have to pay for the plane ticket and
Yeah.
organize. I love it. It's a lot more sort of self-determining. I feel a lot more involved. I care. I mean, I care deeply about this business. We all do.
Mm.
It's our baby. We want it to work. And also, it's working in an industry I've been part of for 25 years, commentating on other people's cars, other people's efforts.
Yeah.
But now I am actually part of it. And that feels great. It's terrifying sometimes. A lot of people say don't turn your hobby into a job because you ruin it. But I kind of did that years and years ago when I started doing car shows, even before Top Gear. So that's nearly 40.
I think I would then ask then, is there a big sort of weight on your shoulder working on people's cars? So you work on someone's cars and then there's the reality of, hey, well, this is Richard Hammond. Is there a huge expectation from customers that now have this massive, okay, well, this car's going to come out pristine, or do you kind of just settle them down and say no?
I learned the lesson very early on. Somebody explained to me it's all about the customers, and it is totally. Because if whether it's a full restoration or just a color change or just going through it and recommissioning a car, it is about their expectations, and you've got to take them with you on that. I hate to say journey because it's a buzzword, but journey, because you are setting out on that together. And I learned early on, if you uncover problems, if you've told them this is what it's going to cost, and then you uncover problems that you haven't seen in advance, and the money goes up massively, they're not going to stand that. So I have ended up, in the early days, I ended up basically paying to restore other people's cars for them. You've got to be realistic. We've got a Porsche 930 at the moment, turbo, which we're doing for a guy. He wants it done in a very particular way, and I'm having to take him with me on that trip. Thankfully, when we got it back from dipping, it's solid, it's good. Yeah. But it could have been the other way, and he had to be prepared for that, because I have to know, if I turn around to him and say, man, it's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much, he's got to be ready to come with me. Otherwise, I'm going to have a car in my workshop that's occupying real estate that I need to make money. But I can't turn around and tell somebody it's going to cost twice as much, because they might not want to do it. So it's all about the people that you're working with. And I'm very lucky. We're building a small client base, people who understand that will be completely transparent. And I'm loving all of making those decisions. And it's for Neil and Andrew and Anthony as well, for them. They ran their business in the past, but it was very small, very local. They knew all their customers. They were ordinary cars. That's one end of it. But it's suddenly you've got a valuable high-end car rig, and somebody's committing to spending tens of thousands of pounds on it. And then you discover it might cost a lot more. That's a more complex relationship that does need management. And I enjoy that process. It's
okay. So then my next question would be your top 5 classic cars, and I'm part of that. What would you think, in your opinion, would be the next appreciating classic that someone would bring to you to restore?
Oh, right. My personal top 5 classic cars that I would want. Blimey, top of head, Lamborghini Miura, sort of birth of the supercar. I probably would go vintage as well. I'd want something like either the old Vauxhall 1098, because they're just awesome, or a Glow Bentley. And then I probably would I'd have to have an Aston. I'm not a massive Aston fan, but maybe a DB4 GT. I'd go that route.
Nice.
Mark 1 Escort Mexico with bubble arches on it. I'm guessing a 930 series turbo 911, an 80s turbo. That would be mine. But then as for what's the next thing, it's always, isn't it? There's always, it happens in waves, doesn't it? The generation reaches a point when they can suddenly realize, oh, I didn't have any money back then, but I could now afford one of these. As a result, everybody chases them and the values go through the roof. So it happens to Peugeot 205 GTIs, it happens to Mark II Escorts. It's an ordinary Mark II Escort now. It's big money. It's
big money,
so I think the Japanese stuff is going absolutely berserk. So anything 80s, 90s, 2000s Japanese things. I mean, that Subaru Impreza P1 went for, I can't remember how many 100,000, but an insane amount of money. So yeah, always look at the cars from sort of 20 years ago and brace for them to go flying up. Obviously, what's going to happen next, I don't know now because of electrification. To what extent electrification will dominate all? Personally, I don't think it will, because infrastructure-wise, we can't support it. I think it's never going to be, the whole transport infrastructure isn't going to go all electric. It'll be a patchwork quilt. Synthetic fuels will have a role to play in that if direct carbon capture from the air can be sorted. It totally will. Classic cars, making, do, and mend. I mean, I run an electric car as my just up and down the
Tesla, yeah.
Well, I've swapped that out now because it didn't have the range. So I've bought a Mercedes EQS because 400 plus mile range, which I needed to do a long journey up to the Lake District.
Yeah.
And that's going to have to do about 190,000 miles before it's offset its carbon footprint. Whereas for a lot of people, make, do, and mend, if you're doing minimal mileage, a guy called Henry Pearman, who was one of the founding directors of Eagle E-Types, he set up the Historic and Classic Vehicles Alliance, which is looking at a multi-billion-dollar industry in the UK alone, classic cars. And he did some calculations, I had them done, which with most classic car owners, their classic car does less than 1,000 miles a year. And because its carbon footprint is 10, 20, 50, 60 years old, its carbon footprint that's from its manufacture. Its carbon footprint annually is about half that of your mobile phone or your laptop, the equivalent of, because of the minimal mileage. So it's about make, do, and mend. Often, if you're going to do less than 1,000 miles a year, if you buy a brand new electric car, if you're able to afford to, which 99.9% of people aren't, even if you do, you've had to mine the nickel, cadmium, and all the rest of it has had to be made. That carbon footprint will take decades to offset. You're better off with a nicely restored, cheap to run classic car. It's make, do, and mend, isn't it? Which we should be doing with our clothes. We should be doing with everything we have. We shouldn't just be buying new.
Okay, so the question I wanted to ask was, in the show, it's quite authentic that you've involved your family and the kids, into it. So that's been quite nice to see. But what have they been like generally with this whole restoration business, but also just with cars in general? Because I found that a lot of people who are in that space, their families either very interested or just not bothered at all. So, has that been very genuine enough, like, oh, dad's getting in it, let's just support him because we love him? Or has it been like, let's be involved and we love it as much as you do?
I think they do fit in the middle a little bit. They do get drawn in. They've been to a couple of events with me, and it's difficult not to. I think oftentimes, if somebody's really enthusiastic about something, that's compelling in and of itself, isn't it? I mean, who knew that the world would be gripped by somebody baking a cake? Nobody ever cared about baking. Now there's shows about it. It's not really about baking the cake. It's about sharing their passion, seeing them ignited by it.
Yeah.
And I think that works with this as well, is that you don't have to particularly care about classic cars, but it's just somebody who does. Watching somebody care about something is always compelling.
Okay, well, super. Well, that's all I had. I'm just going to quickly do something millennial for you. I'm going to just grab a quick digital selfie.
That is pretty millennial. That is.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate just, having my first
I'm so glad. Well, you keep up the good work there. I mean, keep spreading the news and the word and talking about it. And I think sharing passion for something that is so essentially human, the ability to move yourself from one place to another.
Absolutely.
Which is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So thank you for everything that you do, and hopefully we'll get to have more interactions when you come here.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll be there again, I've no doubt. I'll see you then.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care.